OK。对啊，好，再说。谢谢。为什么还会有106的计划构想书最后？可是不是要先定案一版，然后再改了吗？你说定案中还是不是定案不会一直更新这件事情？我知道，我觉得这话可能是直接那个让全部人回馈。哦。10月，因为下礼拜的中心会议时间还没出来的。我应该都结束。没有，我们没有整个联盟应该不是今天啊，今天是古城计划跟今天的我都有。你讲台东是台东，刚好跟今天的课有散开，但他可能不知道今天的课是没有台东的课，他可能以为今天有台东直播，他可能以为今天他可能以为今天有台东，因为我有确实有台东缺课，确实我有台东缺课。刚好散过。真的是，今天我就靠这杯红茶送到现在。我有发现吗？刚刚那一场我也是在后面放空。我讲完的时候，他不说我还有20分钟要讲。
各位伙伴，待会儿这场讲座呢是用英文发表，所以呢，如果你没有耳机的话，可能要再去借一下哈。
那我要去借。可是志玉一直跟我说他中文台语都不说，志玉就会说跟他很熟，真的吗？我忘了，刘文佳老师，这样念熟啊。你好。你知道蔡部住哪里？什么？这么远，新店那边，红木栅那边。到饭店，或者下次的话，我如果阿福要搭计程车就要跟他，因为我们比较懂，他住景安还是永安，对，会比较顺这样。 我就会说老师不用，会因为我走另外一边那个，他是说走那个会塞车，因为文化确实我们这边比较不塞，可是也不是比 Google 跑比较远，快2分钟。可是他那边真的就是塞，长途版。对啊，我觉得一直很差，你后来过很多年，所以你后来思考，对不对？
好，各位伙伴，我们即将开始今天的专题演讲第3场，请会场外的伙伴，我们大家一起再请他们赶快入座，谢谢。
也会规定到，但是如果你要用 WiFi， 然后他就会说不清楚。但如果你跟 Google 说 WiFi， 它就会显示怎么回事，它就会跑很多 Google 就会觉得你说你老公，我知道 Google 也很多一点。
那你用的这个吗？
对，我在会啊。
刚进去好。
现在现场是有1200人。我来看一下。我自己这边看啊，不用看就是看变化，然后那个是走出去。
你这是今天的吗？
各位伙伴，我们今天第3场专题演讲即将开始。那么在一整天非常多元而且丰富的活动之后呢，以及课程的规划之后呢，我相信大家对于这一场也是非常的期待。我们特别邀请到新加坡的贵宾来担任我们的主讲人。首先让我介绍一下我们今天的主讲人，是来自新加坡南洋理工大学国家教育研究院师资教育学院的院长刘文霞刘院长。我们是不是先掌声鼓励一下刘文霞？掌声鼓励一下好，谢谢。那么今天我们也特别邀请到的主持人是我们今天已经介绍过上一场呢，帮我们担任主持人的赖阿福赖主任，请掌声鼓励。The keynote speech for number 3 today, the speech title is Transforming Teacher Education, New Roles and New Pedagogies. The keynote speaker is Liu Wenjia, who is the Dean of Teacher Education from National Institute of Education from Singapore. And the second chair is Lai Afu, who is the chair of Department of Computer Science from the University of Taipei, Taiwan. 让我们以热烈掌声欢迎我们的主任来开场，谢谢。
各位教授、各位校长、主任还有老师，大家午安。好久听到唔对，哦，各位听有无？好久就是最下的，所以我们今天呢，当然这个好久就是要请我们刘文佳教授来给我们做演讲。那他的题目我们看一下是那个他叫教师培育啊，实际上是师范教育的啊。那这个我想早期的师范教育跟现在不一样，现在的师资培育很重要的，他的学生是什么样的学生？是数位原民，叫 digital native。那这个数位原民的学生，他的特质跟我们这些数位移民的特质不一样。各位知道数位移民啊，如果你在数位时代被淘汰，那就是数位难民，对不对 ？OK， 那我想我们这些数位移民怎么来教导这些师范学生，这 student teacher， 让他可以转换，让数位原民的老师去带数位原民啊，那这个在整个思维上会有不一样的方法，尤其是资讯科技导入老师的角色。 不一样，角色弄错了，你的方法一定是错误的。那角色错误就代表你的教学法一定会有不好的地方、不适用的地方。好，那我们今天很荣幸邀请到刘文佳，刘文佳，因为其实我整个看我只知道刘教授，他的国家教育学院师资教育学院院长。好，OK， 那应该就是不是掌控了，就是引导的新加坡师资培育的一个重要的舵手。我想以新加坡这么样亚洲四小龙的这么小地方，不过他们确实非常的powerful，非常的冲aggressive。那培养师资当然是一个师资培育，一定是影响到整个国力的东西。我想那要能够国力提升，那你师范教育就要改变。那接下来我们就请那个刘教授为我们做专题演讲，我想大家就好好的聆听，应该是英文的了哈，不是中文，我不知道。好，我们再次鼓掌欢迎我们刘教授。
主任，谢谢。大家下午好。我的中文说的不是很好，所以只能用英文发表，请大家原谅。Hey, good afternoon. Well, because my Mandarin is not very good, so please forgive me. I will do the presentation in English. I know that most of you are principal and teachers, so the challenge would really be, what would I say that is of relevance to you? I'm focusing on teacher education, so maybe just to get started, I'll just give you an overview. The very first part, I will cover mainly the context. So we can look at, who are our learners today, what are the roles of teachers. The second part, I would like to share some thoughts I have or we have in Singapore about teacher education. I am acutely aware that I stand between you and the end of the day, so I will make sure that I do not overrun my time. Okay, I think it has been a long day for you. Okay, this is a little boy. He went up to his mother and he said, he actually asked a question. I am not very sure what he asked, but interestingly, the mom said, no, you weren't downloaded. You were born. In fact, at this point in time, it is very likely that the mom may even say, no, you were not 3D printed. You were born. So like what Lai Jiao said just now, the students nowadays, they are different. They are digital natives. We are immigrants. Hopefully we will never be nanny. Okay? But these are our students. And this is another one where this little boy, 5 years old, he was talking to himself. And he said, my dad said when he was a kid, they didn't have Blogger or Twitter. He said that people sat around the table and discussed things face to face. I wonder if people had Google Ads on their forehead back then. It is very clear that the children we have in class actually live in a very different world. They are very comfortable in the real world, and they are also very comfortable in the virtual world. We have always been doing things in a certain way. This is an advertisement by IKEA. So this person went for a job interview. And the manager told the person, make a chair and take a seat. I don't know whether you have similar challenges we have in Singapore. We realize that our students are very good when they sit for exam. They are very good when they need to come up with a correct answer. We train them very well, so they do very well on PISA tests. But in today's world, with everything changing so fast that the only constant is change, they need to come up with solutions where there is no standard answer. And they need to look at issues that are not documented in textbook. So this is really the challenges that our students would face in future. I was sent this by a teacher. And when I saw this, I thought this is something that all teachers really need to think very deeply about. The question there is, why do I need a teacher when I've got Google? I think we know that there is a lot of information when you Google online. You can find out anything about space, you can learn anything that you want to learn. So if a teacher is only supposed to transmit knowledge, then maybe it's time that we don't need teachers. Because with a computer, when you're online, you can learn on your own. Right?
Right.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I was a teacher, by the way. I was a chemistry teacher, a secondary school chemistry teacher. So when I saw this, I was a little bit indignant. I didn't think that this was the correct way in which we categorize teachers. I think teachers do a lot more than that. So we have to always remember, actually, teachers aren't just transmitter of knowledge. We do more than that. And we need to be able to say that loudly and confidently. But what do teachers do? We need to think through, what do we want our teachers to do in the classroom? And we need to then decide how we can develop them so that they can deliver their responsibilities. Okay. Anyway, that is NIE, the front of NIE. NIE Singapore, I'm not sure whether you know, but we are the only teacher education institute in the whole of Singapore. So we prepare all teachers, principal, head of department. What it really means is, if Singapore is doing well, hopefully our minister will say, well done Singapore, or well done NIE. But if our students aren't doing well, there is only one party to blame, and it will be NIE. Because all the teachers come to us. So because of that, we really need to take our responsibility very seriously. If a teacher shapes the future of the students, we shape what a teacher will do in the classroom. Schools then and now. This was Singapore schools 50 years ago. Last year we celebrated our SG50 birthday. So that was how Singapore schools looked like 50 years ago. This is how our school looks like now. The question we always ask ourselves is, did we go far enough? Did we push enough to make sure that we prepare our students so that they create their future? I think we have come a long way, but the general feeling in Singapore is there are more that we can do. We need to know where we are heading. I'm very sure in all the schools, with the Ministry of Education, you would have talked about what do you want your students to be like after they leave school. For us in Singapore, this is called 21st Century Competency. It's something that NIE, as well as the school, the ministry, and the students are aware of, and we all have a common vision. I think the vision is important. You need to know what you're working for, and you need to see what eventually is the end point. So we want students who are confident person, self-directed learner, active contributor, concerned citizen. But what is relevant to this conference, because it's iCampus and linked to technology, really is to highlight the 21st century competencies in here. And that is really, we say that it is civics literacy, global awareness, and cross-cultural skills. So that's important. We also emphasize a lot on critical and inventive thinking, as well as communication, collaboration, and information skills. So these are the competencies we want to inculcate in our students in school. Bearing this in mind, then we have to ask ourselves, what do we have to do during teacher education? Because if we don't change what we do for teachers, nothing will change in the classroom. Yes, again. Okay, I mentioned just now that we cannot see teachers as only transmitter of knowledge. So in NIE, when we prepare our student teachers for school, we are very mindful that in this current days and age, teachers need to be facilitators of learning. They need to be architects of learning environment, shaper of character, and leaders of educational change. So these are the things that we hold in mind, and these are the roles and responsibilities we ask of our teachers. So you find that they do not just go and impart knowledge. They need to design the learning environment, which would include both the real world and the virtual world. They need to also facilitate a learning process. And facilitating learning process doesn't mean that you just tell the students what they have to learn. Students have to make learning their own. So there are certain experiences we design for our student teachers. And this is the one that I want to share. So if you don't remember a lot of what I'm sharing today, I hope you remember the acronym EPIC. E-P-I-I-C. And I will explain to you, okay? Okay, the first, we say that currently, students in school really are the EPIC learners. We call them the EPIC learners. And because they are EPIC learners, we want to make sure our student teachers have an EPIC experience so that they are able to design the learning environment to support our EPIC students in school. So what does EPIC mean? The first E is experiential. Okay. P is participatory, image-rich, inquiry-based, and finally, connectedness. So these are the 5 experiences we built into our program. I will elaborate. The bottom, dark blue part, is how we then build our learning environment. So you have learning experiences, you have the learning environment. Okay, I will elaborate on all of these. So this is just an overview. Okay, the first E, experiential, is really 体验性教学, where you really go through the experience. And this really is important because we believe that students are supposed to interpret their experience, and we plan for them to have proper reflection, so it becomes part of what they see as abstract reasoning. So, it goes through the code cycle. You have your active experimentation, you do a reflection, then it becomes something that is part of your construction of your knowledge. I will give an example of how it's done, but this is the first E. The second E is participatory, where they are expected to take part in it and not be passive in the learning process. So in a sense, we are looking at Piaget or Vygotsky. Piaget is really where you are part of the learning process and you are experimenting, you are trying. Vygotsky is where you have somebody who is an experienced mentor guiding you as you make sense of your learning. In participatory learning, it is important to let students have ownership. They need to make certain decisions. We get them to actually guide one another, so there's a lot of collaboration, co-construction of knowledge. So this is P. The third one is image-rich. I think we are all aware, the younger generation are not so drawn to words compared to our generation. I think we tend to read a bit more. They tweet, so they like very short sentences. They may not be as patient with long passages, but they are very in tune with imagery. They like images and they like things to be represented visually. So because of that, we want to make sure that our student teachers are able to assess, analyze, evaluate, and communicate the imagery. And we want them to be able to provide the experience for their students when they go to school. So this is I. There's another I. Okay? This I is very important. This I is inquiry-based. Really is to, inquiry should be 探讨什么？对啊，探究。Okay, 探究是学习。So yeah, that's why I said my Mandarin is not as well. I know some of the words. Okay, what is important, of course, we have been saying that this is a complex world. Actually, none of the real world problems have simple solutions. For every solution that happens in the real world, there are pros and cons. Nothing is ever perfect. We have to make certain evaluations and we decide the best course of action. But sadly, many times when we design curriculum for school, we want students to come up with one single solution. And if we carry on doing that, students actually will not be able to handle ambiguity. They do not know what happens where there are options because they don't have the skill to make the decision. So inquiry becomes a very big part of our teacher education program. We make sure, for example, when they do educational psychology, when they learn about learning, we actually have school teachers to come up with case scenario of situation in the classroom that students face difficulty learning. So they then learn about all their psychology theory through a problem scenario. We've got problem-based learning. So it's through the problem-based scenario that they learn to talk about the reasons behind some of these things. We get them to articulate, document, so that the thinking is made visible. And that is actually a very key part of the inquiry. We also have the last one, C, connectedness. This is actually very big now in Singapore because Singapore is such a small country. We realize that whatever we do, it is not sufficient for our people to just look within. And that's also the reason why connectedness is something that we do not only from one country to another, it is also throughout our program. So this is connectedness, and we want it to transcend discipline, multidisciplinary learning. Okay, so these are the 5 words that I would like you to remember and pick. But let me give you an example of how we actualize all this in the program. Okay, because it's only an example, I don't think I want to stay here for a very long time. So I'm going to just quickly tell you some of the things we are doing. Okay, experiential, I mentioned that we want them to starting point to be experience, that they go through it and they feel, okay, and they reflect on what they did. So we have what's called group endeavor in service learning, where we have students going out to the community for a whole semester. They go to the community to ask the community about their needs, and they work with the community to address some of these issues. We think this is important in values inculcation, but it's also important for them to then understand teachers have a role to play. Because sometimes teachers tend to be in a very protected environment, where you may have gone through schools and you may not see the outside world. So we do think that sending them to the community is important. The second one is international practicum. That was why I was at the University of Taipei this morning. What we really are doing is we are sending our student teachers all over the world so that they can do international, we call it 实践. They will do their practicum or the earlier part, we call it teaching assistantship in different countries. So we have actually signed MOU with Finland, Sweden, New Zealand, Denmark, Switzerland, US, Hong Kong, different countries. But today we actually signed with the University of Taipei, so we are sending some of our students here. And this is important in getting them to develop an international perspective. Through this, we want them to construct their own conceptual map of learning and teaching. So these are some of the newspaper articles that came out. We have student teachers that were helping the Qinjie in the school in our NIE. This is another one. This is the one where the students were sent and they say that it's 文化震撼. They were very surprised at the differences, but interestingly, there are a lot of similarities. We may think that different systems are different, but I think the more you talk to people, we will all realize that the teachers have similar concerns, the students face similar pressure, the ministry and the government are all trying to make sure that we future-proof our citizens. So we have similar challenges, and it's important for student teachers to understand that in the outside world, there are things that they can learn, there are things that they can offer as well. So that is the first E. It may not be so closely linked to your iCampus, but I think what it really means is to tell people that the campus should be a borderless campus. In fact, that is how we see it. That's why learning doesn't happen only in the classroom. We want the campus to be borderless, where students can go to the outside world and we can be in the outside world into NIE. Okay. So this is a quote from one of the students who went to the University of California, Santa Barbara. I've been told how different the education system would be in America, but when you spend your whole life studying in Singapore, you tend to forget or find it hard to imagine that another country will approach education in a wholly different way. It is different when you go to a country for a study trip. When you visit a place and people put on a show for you, you don't really know exactly what happened in the day-to-day running of the system. So when the student teacher goes to a school and spends 5 weeks working alongside a teacher in the system, they will have a better understanding. So then it becomes very deep experience for them. So that's E. Okay, the next one is P. participatory. I mentioned just now that students have to be active agents. They are part of it. So what we do is we really want to make sure we use affordances of technology to allow students the chance to learn anytime, anywhere. So we have a lot of e-courses, and there are things like Flip Classroom. We also have mobile learning. We have a lot of apps that NIE developed. But these are all part of the whole package. I think the reason why I'm sharing the EPIC with you is to put it very succinctly, I would say that technology can be very attractive. Many times, educators are attracted to technology, and you bring in technology to a classroom because of technology. And that is really something we do not want to do. We always tell our teachers that pedagogy must lead technology. Technology is there to support learning. So that's why you find that when I share all these, I don't share through what is the newest technology out there. We want to talk about the experiences we want our student teachers to have. So that's participation. Image reach, again, these are the different technology. We have games-based learning, we have video app, we have something that we are very interested in is really the use of 3D and virtual reality. It's very new and it's very exciting, but what is really interesting for our students is to be able to not only look at a video and look at red blood cell, now they can actually imagine or they can see themselves swimming through the blood vessel, touching the platelets, flipping it. So we are working very closely with our programmers, and we are coming out with some of these 3D and virtual reality apps for the students in school. In fact, in our Singapore schools, there are some schools that already have 3D classroom, and that's what we are doing. Although it is a very attractive form of technology, but essentially what happens here is that we want the students to be immersed in the experience. So that should be something that drives us. Inquiry-based, we use problem-based learning, which I mentioned. The other one that I want to highlight is appreciative inquiry. This is something new, so I'll just spend a couple of minutes on it. We have a new course that is called Singapore Kaleidoscope. We are in fact mounting the course this November. It's starting, it's very new. What we want to do may be relevant to you as well. We want our students to get to know Singapore and to look at Singapore through different perspectives. Okay, our challenge really is, because Singapore is a very young country, we don't have many years of history. So sometimes they do not appreciate what we have. And we realize that the younger generation, maybe because we are quite successful in our education system, they tend to be very critical. They are very critical and they criticize everything, but they're not very appreciative. So that's why we thought it's important for them to actually look at Singapore through different lenses. We wanted to look at Singapore through cultural lens, the heritage lens, as well as the geopolitical lens. So in this module, what is interesting for us is we want the student teachers to contribute back by mapping out different places in Singapore. So the students will travel around Singapore, they will find out about different places, they will input at a different point, and they will mark out a learning journey. So what happens is, at the end of the course, this is going to be what the cohort will give to Singapore teachers. So Singapore teachers can then go to the website and say, okay, I'm going to bring my students to look at these places, let's find out what's the information. And they can then map out the whole learning journey. So every batch of teachers that go to us, we want them to contribute to this map. And we think that this is a way where they are actively involved, where they find out about the country, and they then write down what they should appreciate about the country. This helps in terms of connecting people. It helps in terms of connecting places. It also helps in terms of connecting time and space, because it's really from a historical perspective. Okay, so connectedness. So we talk about EPIC. So I say experiential, participatory, image reach, inquiry-based. This is the last C. People connectedness. We are very into connecting with the world. We actually have an app that we call NGO. In fact, our Singapore schools are using that. As they travel around the world, they will then mark up certain points, And on their learning journey, the students would then collaborate. I'm going to show you a video clip so you have a bit better sense of what exactly is happening with some of these things. So that is one part of it. The second one is something that I think a lot of education institutes are looking at, which is Internet of Things. I am not sure how prevalent it is in Taiwan, but it's something that we are looking at very closely. So Internet of Things really means that you have sensors that track certain things. It could be wind, it could be carbon dioxide concentration, it could be temperature change. So it is real world data over a time series. We realize that we don't expose our school children to real world data. So sometimes when they see all these maps and graphs, they have difficulty interpreting it and they don't understand why there are anomalies. So in teacher education now, we are bringing in Internet of Things into our courses, and we are also setting up sensors around Singapore. So in a sense, we want to make sure that NIE is a lab, Singapore becomes a lab, and we are then connected to different countries. I do know that there are some schools in Taiwan who are already using this, who are on Internet of Things. Not very sure whether any of the principals is here, but in Singapore, we have 5 schools who have embarked on this, and we are going to go into this big time. So that's really our plan, part of our plan as a smart nation, because that's what we are trying to roll out in the country. Okay. The other one is where within a program, we realize that for teacher education, sometimes the courses are all very standalone. The argument always is when you learn maths, it is only maths. When you learn science, it's a different subject. And there's no connectedness between the courses. So when we talk about the C, we want to make sure that the students see a bigger picture of why they are learning certain things. In a school, you will have certain things that you will connect with students. In teacher education, we get the students to start what is called a professional practice and inquiry portfolio. So when they come into NIE, they will be asked during the first session to talk about why they want to be a teacher, what is their teaching philosophy. They document that and they put into a portfolio. The portfolio belongs to them. They are empowered to do changes to it. As they go through every single course, during the time they are with us, they will pick up artifacts from the course and put into their portfolio. With every course they've done, they then do a reflection on how did the course make me a better teacher, or how does it help me to become the teacher I want to be. So in this case, what we are getting them to do is to integrate and aggregate their learning. So it's a 4-year course, they will do it across 4 years. And by the time they go for clinical practice, their practical, they will present their portfolio to the school. To the principal, they will share the principal what they have learned, what they started with, what is their teaching philosophy. So in this way, we are forcing the students to articulate. I think talking is important. Sometimes if you don't say it out, it doesn't become part of who you are. It's the moment where you share it, or you are forced to talk about it, then it becomes real to you. So this is actually what one of the students said. There's a lot of unstructured thinking going on, but we may not have time to fully form a particular framework. Okay, but with the sharing of the portfolio, it became the foundation of my philosophy. That aspect of ourselves as educators became more anchored. Okay, so this is really what happened when we try to connect the courses. I think my encouragement to the teachers here and the principal here is within your own program, I am sure there are things you want to connect. So these are things that you probably would have to toy with and see what the things are relevant to you. I've very quickly shared what EPIC means to us, but I have to say that because I kept saying technology is attractive, but technology should not be our focus. So when we design any part of the program, we have certain principles in mind. We need to make sure that everything we do, it actually is meaningful. So these are the principles of learning. We want students to have ownership. There must be scaffolding and expert guidance. The expert guidance can come from a mentor teacher, it can come from an academic professor. It can also be a peer who is a bit more experienced. We also encourage them to build knowledge, so there's a co-construction. So this is actually a principle of learning. I want to share with you, these are the facilities in NIE. I know the words are a little bit small, but there are 6 things at the bottom. These are the things we build in NIE campus to make sure we can achieve or we can let our students get the 21st century experiences we want them to have. So the first one is anywhere, anytime. As I was talking to you, I did mention that this is really a key focus. So having very good network connection, all your cloud capability is important. We are trying very hard to balance between the security risk and what you really want the students to be able to get. So that's the first one, anywhere, anytime, borderless. We have been talking about borderless classroom. We want students to have a porous school. That means people are free to come in and out, not physically, through video link. So we want porous school and we want global students. So in terms of facilities, we actually are building a next generation learning terrace where there are embedded mics. And we can then do video conferencing where everybody in the LT can then communicate with somebody in another country. So it becomes, you're enlarging your classroom. The third one is seamless. We have difficulty because you have your Google platform, you have your different type of platform. We are using learning management system. Transiting from one system to another, one platform to another is not easy. So that is the challenge that we are addressing. We are also looking at how to allow students really to transit from real world to a virtual world seamlessly, from a course A to course B without having to log in and out all the time. So these are things that we are working on. In terms of infrastructure, certain things are put in place. But I do think that some of these things have to be built in as you transform a school. If your infrastructure doesn't change, sometimes teachers will still do what they used to do best because that's the easiest. So we need to have enablers. The fourth one is multimodal. I mentioned image speech, but I do think that students learn best when it's multimodal. When you can hear, when you can experiment, when you can see. Co-learning, that's a big one, where collaboration really is a very key 21st century skill. So has to be built into the program. And the last one is personalized, where the students have autonomy over when they learn certain things, over how they express what they have learned, and even making certain decisions as to what they want to do within a course. Okay, so I think before I thank you, I will just let you have a glimpse of what NIE is like. Sorry, this is what happened when we depend so much on technology. This is really ironical, but there is supposed to be some dialogue. So you can see the person trying to speak, but it didn't come out. So we try to play it again. So bear with us for a minute. Okay, while we are waiting, do you want to ask questions since we are giving them some time to try and figure out whether it can be done? Would you all like to ask a question? And I'll try my best to answer. 有没有人有问题要问？
新加坡现在运用科技在课堂里面做教学，它的可行性。
应该说每一个学校每一班都有，比如说班里面的电脑其实都很普遍，学校还是去了某一个国小之后，其实每一间学校都有，相当普遍。So technology is used very widely in Singapore schools. If you're talking about computer and all this, even iPad, it's actually very common. But we have some schools that are called future schools. So the future schools are a bit more adventurous in some of the innovation that we do. But it's something that Singapore actually has what we call we have a few phases where we put in we call it MP1, MP2, MP3, MP4. There are different plans. But during the first and second stages, which was about more than 10 years ago, the main focus was really to build infrastructure in school. So that was done more than 10 years ago. After that, it was really to up the training of the teachers. So the teachers all have basic competency in delivering tech-mediated classes, lessons. So that is already very, very common across school. Right now, we are looking at the next phase, which is really your smart nation, and we are pushing it a bit more than just making sure that we have the competency. We want them to be able to innovate. I think what is important is we don't want them to just take the technology and use it. The first time when it all started, it was really, okay, how many computers, how many lessons, how many hours? So the counting is on quantity. It wasn't on quality. But we are emphasizing a lot more on quality. We are asking ourselves, when you use technology, what is the role of technology? Does it just replace what you have been doing? Or because you have technology, you are extending what you can do in the classroom? So for example, if I put a video clip on my PowerPoint, this is really a replacement. If I put out a PowerPoint, that is again what I can do last time with a chalkboard. But if I'm linking with a school that is overseas, I'm really extending my classroom. So this is really the phase we are at. And we are looking increasingly to making sure that real-world data is incorporated. Real-world inquiry is very much part of what we do in terms of curriculum design.
像台湾的家长对于学生的视力非常的关心。那我想请教新加坡现在很多学校都已经有使用科技来协助来帮助教跟学。那么学生有没有做过相关的一个普遍性的调查？学生们在视力上有没有任何的影响？
我不知道是不是因为是教学的影响呢，还是他们都在玩手机的影响？ Okay, it's very difficult to comment, but it is true that Singapore children, a higher percentage of them who are short-sighted. I think in our generation, maybe I'm a bit older than some of you, we tend to spend a lot of time outdoors. You play, you run around, but now the students, apart from using computer for lessons, they play with their video games. So it is definitely an area of concern. Is there any other question? 可以用华语问，我听得懂。
可以请教一下说，刚刚所讲的应该都是比较直接的老师的teacher education的能力的培养哈。那对于在职老师的那种professional development，在新加坡有些比较不一样的，就是同样的标准。
Okay, professional development follow some of the basic principles. 我们先看啤酒 ，OK？ 好。
The last one I wasn't so confident, but now I think I'm confident to pass the exam this time.
I learned numerous tools to engage my students with respect to pedagogy. For instance, I use games at the start of my lesson as part of trivia activities, as well as at the end of my lesson as part of assessment following. My students really enjoyed these activities because they have never had so much fun playing these sort of games for their other classes.
I think deep and meaningful collaboration is really about fostering the rules, routines, mindsets in our classrooms that will really enable students of diverse backgrounds to come together, feel valued, feel confident about sharing their own perspectives, having the humility to submit their perspectives to the peers critique. After coming to NIE, I've really had the privilege to be among peers who are so mutually supportive and really willing to sharpen each other's learning, to share resources, lesson plans that will really help us a lot in the future.
when I was a content teacher, I personally used a very interesting tool called Class Cloud, which is a platform to gamify classroom lesson. This has actually allowed me to communicate with the students, not just in the classroom, but also out of the classroom. They post questions there, and sometimes I post interesting student sessions. Students are expected to work in teams. As foster not only my communication with them, but also encourage communication within the students and the classroom. As a professional in the teaching profession, it is important to constantly improve ourselves, because it's only through continuous improvement that we can deliver quality education to the child. I feel it's important after I've conducted every lesson to reflect, to journal, and service questions to reflect my thinking and collect data to give me insights into how I can pay attention to the challenges of my craft, as well as the areas of improvement which I can work on. That is looking inwards. Looking upwards, I feel that it's always important to articulate my thought process. By sharing my assumptions that I make for myself, my colleagues, my students, share the people around me, my colleagues, doing that to align our educational goals, what constitutes success, what constitutes meaningful future. And good luck allows all of us to use it at the same time, and at the same time we can discuss who will do which picture, and then it will help us to understand the picture. The videos make the lessons interesting by showing us many videos, also teaches us analogies to easier explain to us the concept. For example, we use stories which engages us so that we see that it's not interesting and easier to understand what it is.
I think it's very fun learning with Chinese class, and meeting my friends makes me learn better.
I like PE because it is the most hands-on subject in the school curriculum. It also teaches me many values such as teamwork, time-taking, and perseverance.
I love to read. I love my teachers. I love to learn. And I love school!
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you the teacher of today and tomorrow, the 21st century educator, the product of NIE.
Okay, thank you for your patience. That really taught us never to be too dependent on technology because anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So it's very important that teachers still know what you need to do and what you can do when technology doesn't work. Okay, so I've come to the end of my presentation. In fact, all I wanted to share really was the last quote that we do not just shape the future of our children, we really can get them to create the future. So with that, thank you very much for your time and attention. I know it's been a long day. Thank you.
好，我们感谢那个刘院长的给我们的演讲。那刚才也给各位一个很好的一个体验式学习啊，他那个高科技高障碍，对不对？那当然不能怪延期中心了，因为这个地方是硫磺很严重的，所以应该它的那个 voice channel、voice track 很容易就会有腐蚀的情况啊，所以也是一种学习。那代表什么？我们如果要做所谓的 e-learning 或是 mobile learning， 必须要把环境做一个建立，甚至要有替代的方案。好，那刚刚我们刘教授讲，其实有个很重要就是 EPRIC 啊，就是它一个教室器的一个 model 哈，也包含那个体验式学习啊、参与啊，还有那个 inquiry-based learning 哦，他们也有联际国际化，因为新加坡是蛮国际化的，所以他们的他们到海外去实习，但台湾没有强迫，你要check不check也没什么关系。不过他们强调服务学习，这个也各位可以看到，我们台湾的现在各个大学都会有服务学习的课，就是说 learning to service 跟 service to learn 这个东西，其实在台湾也是都有这些共识啊。当然，我想新加坡的模式也可以，那我们来反思一下我们哪边做不好啊，尤其是师范教育的，就是。包括我们也是在做师培训练，国北、市北还有中教大，刚好我们这三个学校教授都在，可以反思一下我们哪边可以做得更好的哈。那接着我想我们也感谢我们刘教授给我们一个很好的 talk， 就是后续别忘对掉，我想大家一定有很大的收获，谢谢大家，也谢谢刘教授。
我们谢谢院长两位王院长还有刘院长今天给予我们的第3个专题演讲非常精彩的一个呈现。那么接下来我们要请我们的中心主任呢来致赠纪念品给今天为大家担任主讲的几位教育的前辈。首先我们请刘院长再度上台，由我们主任来致赠礼物，表达我们的感谢。We are going to have the gift presentation, and the next is Professor Dr. Chia.那么今天的整个课程还有整个系列讲座都告了段落。那我们现在是请几位贵宾也上舞台来，再跟我们的中心主任来共同来合照。我们请王院长、刘院长，还有黄所长、赖主任，还有 Kafka， 我们是先合照一张。那么接下来的合影呢，请中心同仁预备哈。
我们感谢大家哈，今天是周末还能够从早哈一直持续到现在，那也感谢所有的我们的院长、所长、主任还有两位外宾哈，跟着我们给我们的大指导跟支持哈，谢谢大家。
现场教育伙伴是再度以热烈的掌声。
想哪一些地方没有看到，可以再点一下那个直播的网址哈，网络直播的网址看看，如果你要想接触。
好，各位伙伴，我们是不是再度以热烈的掌声来谢谢我们的刘院长，还有 Costa 也从海外飞过来，那还有我们现场留下来的几位教育界的先进，谢谢，谢谢，
谢谢大家的参与哦。
好，那么中心同仁如果要合影，我们现在是也请几位贵宾可以跟我们一起中心同仁。
好，请大家一块来。我们来给大家在网站中。
好，我们也欢迎所有的伙伴们，大家一起到前台来跟我们大家一起共同的合影，为我们今天的国际论坛来留下一个美丽的合照。来，请大家往前移动，谢谢。后面好像还是过来。
我在拿东西呀、我看我等下就找不到了。
我们再度谢谢所有工作的同仁，还有各位教育伙伴的参与，还有今天莅临我们现场的所有的贵宾，还有教授。